Imagine a man who once ruled the automotive industry, a mastermind who saved companies and built empires, now confined to a tiny cell in a foreign land. He wasn't a criminal by nature, but found himself branded as one by his own board members and the government of Japan. Carlos Ghosn, a name once synonymous with success and wealth, now wore the label of an accused criminal, a man trapped in a foreign land with no allies, no escape, and a daunting legal battle ahead of him. But unknown to everyone, Ghosn was quietly planning something extraordinary. It was late 2019, and Ghosn had been under house arrest in Japan for nearly a year. His once glorious life had turned into a series of court hearings and isolation. His movement was restricted, and he was constantly monitored. The Japanese judicial system was unforgiving, and Ghosn knew the odds of winning his freedom were slim. He felt like a prisoner in a gilded cage. Surveillance was everywhere. Cameras captured his every move. Guards watched his doors, and he knew the slightest misstep could land him back in a much colder, darker cell. But Carlos Ghosn was no ordinary man. Born in Brazil and raised in Lebanon and France, Ghosn was known for his relentless ambition and intelligence. He didn't reach the top of the corporate world by giving up, and he wasn't about to start now. He knew he had to escape, but the question was, how? The plan he would need had to be meticulous, flawless, and above all, undetectable. Any mistake would mean a life sentence in a Japanese prison. The first thing Ghosn realized was that he couldn't do this alone. He needed a team willing to risk everything to help him escape from one of the most secure countries in the world. So, he began contacting people he trusted, slowly and carefully. Among them was an ex-Green Beret named Michael Taylor, a man who specialized in risky extractions and had a track record of pulling off the impossible. Taylor was a former U.S. Special Forces operative who had worked in conflict zones across the world. If anyone could help Ghosn pull off an escape, it was Taylor. The two communicated in secret, planning every detail to the smallest degree. Taylor had been involved in similar missions before, but never one under such intense scrutiny. They discussed options, ran through scenarios, and mapped out the most daring escape route possible. It wouldn't be easy. The Japanese authorities kept Ghosn under tight surveillance, and he had little freedom of movement. But that's where Taylor's skills came in. Their plan was nothing short of audacious. Ghosn's house arrest conditions required him to surrender his passport, limiting his options for any legitimate travel. But that wasn't the only challenge. His home was guarded, his visits were monitored, and his communications were restricted. Taylor knew that if they were going to succeed, they had to find a way to smuggle Ghosn out right under the nose of his captors. The escape was set for December 29, 2019. Ghosn's captors were used to him following a predictable routine. They knew when he left his house, when he returned, and when he had visitors. But on this day, things would be different. Taylor and his son arrived in Japan on a private jet, posing as musicians traveling with bulky instrument cases. The plan hinged on these cases. They weren't carrying instruments, but would instead serve as the vehicle for Ghosn's escape. As night fell, the operation began. Ghosn was briefed on the exact timing and movements he needed to follow. Timing was everything. He had to evade detection from surveillance cameras, and he couldn't afford to leave any trace of his departure. In an incredible feat of coordination, Ghosn slipped past his guards and made his way to a nearby hotel where Taylor and his team waited. There, inside a room, stood the two oversized instrument cases. Taylor gave Ghosn a final briefing, reiterating that there would be no turning back. He would be smuggled through an airport, hidden inside one of these boxes, with barely enough room to breathe. Ghosn climbed in, squeezing himself into the confined space. His heart pounded as he heard the locks click shut, sealing him inside. He knew he was now completely dependent on the skill and nerve of his rescuers. Taylor and his son acted as though everything was normal, wheeling the case down through the hotel lobby and toward a car. Every step was nerve-wracking. A single slip, A single suspicious look, and everything would come crashing down. But luck was on their side. They managed to transport Ghosn to Osaka's Kansai International Airport, one of Japan's major international hubs. They moved quickly but calmly, ensuring not to raise any suspicions. The next phase was perhaps the most nerve-wracking. At the airport, Taylor and his team had to pass through security with the instrument case that held Ghosn. If anyone had opened it, they would have discovered one of the most famous men in Japan hiding inside. But in a shocking oversight, Japanese airport security didn't scan the oversized case, letting it pass without a second glance. Inside the box, Ghosn was struggling. The limited air made it hard to breathe, and the confined space was almost unbearable. He had no way of knowing what was happening outside, relying entirely on the professionalism of his team. The minutes dragged on like hours, but soon he felt the shift as the case was loaded onto a private jet. He was about to leave Japan, defying one of the strictest legal systems in the world. Once airborne, Ghosn finally breathed a sigh of relief. The plane was heading to Turkey, where he would change aircraft for his final destination, Lebanon. Lebanon had no extradition treaty with Japan, meaning that once he arrived, he would be safe. His escape had been a spectacular success, a plan executed with military precision. By the time the Japanese authorities realized he was missing, he was already far beyond their reach. The international reaction was immediate and intense. Japan was humiliated, and the media was in a frenzy. How could someone like Carlos Ghosn, under such strict surveillance, escape so effortlessly? It was a question that haunted Japanese authorities, and the ramifications were severe. Japan issued international arrest warrants, and their legal system faced scrutiny for its handling of foreign detainees. Some saw Ghosn as a fugitive, others saw him as a man fighting for justice in a system that had turned against him. In Lebanon, Ghosn held a press conference, boldly proclaiming his innocence and accusing Nissan and Japanese officials of plotting against him. He painted a picture of betrayal, of corporate and political scheming, and he vowed never to return to Japan. His escape had been dangerous, and he knew that even in Lebanon, he would live under the constant threat of retribution. Despite the risks, Ghosn had pulled off one of the most dramatic escapes in modern history. His story became the stuff of legend, a tale of ambition, betrayal, and a daring escape from a foreign land. And while his legal troubles may never truly disappear, Carlos Ghosn's escape will be remembered as one of the boldest and most unexpected moves in the world of corporate scandal and intrigue.